CNN has learned that the Trump administration is now debating whether to release a transcript of the Justice Department's recent interview with her. According to 3 senior administration officials, the DOJ has an audio recording and a transcript compiled from her 2-day meeting last month with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. CNN's Paula Reed joins us now. So, Paula, what more are you learning about these discussions over at the White House?
So, Boris, news of this audio recording and the fact that there are discussions about possibly releasing a transcript, this all comes as the administration continues to face criticism for backtracking on its promise to be more transparent with the Epstein evidence it has in its possession. And the reason this particular audio recording is so significant is because the administration has not really given us many details at all about what Maxwell said in her roughly 10-hour interview with the Deputy Attorney General. Now, it's really notable, and in the course of our reporting, we were a little surprised that a full audio recording was made and not the usual just sort of summary of the interview, because this is someone who is a convicted sex trafficker. Her credibility has been questioned in the past. She's also been in prison for several years, which doesn't really help anyone's mental state. So now we're told that there are discussions about whether they should release this. Now, if this transcript were to be released, any sensitive information, particularly information about victims, would have to be redacted. But as of now, we are told that no final decision has been made. But now that me, our colleague Elena Treen, and Kristen Holmes have reported the existence of this audio and this transcript, it is unlikely that the pressure is going to let up on the administration over its lack of transparency over this evidence.
And Paula, we understand that we just learned Ghislaine Maxwell is now pushing back against the DOJ's effort to unseal grand jury testimony. What is she saying?
That's right. Here, this is the Justice Department's request to unseal grand jury transcripts. They made this request in Florida and New York for the grand juries that investigated Jeffrey Epstein. Florida judge denied the request, but in New York, the judge has opened the discussion up to other parties who could be impacted by this, victims and Maxwell, to weigh in here. And Maxwell's lawyer had previously signaled that they would oppose this, but here, in his filing to the court a short time ago, they expanded on their reasoning, writing, quote, "Jeffrey Epstein is dead. Ghislaine Maxwell is not. Whatever interest the public may have in Epstein, that interest cannot justify a broad intrusion into grand jury secrecy in a case where the defendant is alive, her legal options are viable, and her due process rights remain." Of course, they're referring to the fact that she is appealing part of her case to the Supreme Court. But we're also hearing from victims, and it's really interesting, Boris, the victims we've heard from so far, they are not opposing the release of this material. In fact, they're pushing for more transparency as long as, they protect victims. But really what they're asking for is a chance to be able to move on and begin healing. And they have until the end of the day today to weigh in.
Paula Reed, thank you so much for that reporting. Brianna?
Today, the House Oversight Committee issued nearly a dozen subpoenas for information related to Jeffrey Epstein. The committee is Republican-led, but this is a bipartisan effort that was initiated by Democrats. The committee's subpoena to the Justice Department demands that it provide any Epstein files in its possession with victims' names redacted. The committee also wants to see communications between former Biden administration officials and the DOJ related to the Epstein case. The oversight panel also subpoenaed 6 former attorneys general for closed-door depositions in the coming months, and it's seeking as well depositions from former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, along with former FBI directors Jim Comey and Robert Mueller. With us now is Democratic Congressman Robert Garcia of California. He's the ranking member on the House Oversight Committee. Congressman, thank you for being with us. And as we're looking here at Oversight subpoenaing DOJ for the Epstein files, do you expect DOJ to comply, and what do you think will be redacted besides victims' names?
Well, first, we're obviously very supportive and glad that the actual subpoena was actually out today. This is something, of course, that Democrats forced a vote on just a couple of weeks ago, and we had the bipartisan support of a few Republicans coming over and essentially voting for our motion. What's really important is that Chairman Comer, in conversations with us, made it clear that we want these files immediately. So the DOJ has now 2 weeks to send over. It's not just files, it's documents, it's videos, it's other materials. The DOJ needs to comply with the subpoena. We expect this subpoena to be complied to. That is in the law. And so we're expecting a response from them very soon. This is a win for the American public and transparency. And most importantly, this is important to center the victims and to get justice for them. Now, as it relates to redactions, we've been clear that our focus is to protect the actual victims. And so, of course, there has to be redactions to protect the young women and girls that have been victimized and sexually trafficked in horrific ways. That's got to be the center. But what we should not be doing is protecting anyone else. We should not be protecting anyone that preyed on these women. We should not be protecting anyone that is powerful or wealthy or Donald Trump or anyone else that may be in the files. And we know the president is listed in those files because it's been reported that the DOJ has told them that in just the last month or two. And so all of that is developing. Now we're going to get these files and get transparency for the victims.
We should note he's not been linked to wrongdoing. You mentioned videos. What videos?
We understand that the Department of Justice and the Epstein files, it's not just paper documents. It's paper documents.
No, I understand what you're saying. I'm asking,
of
are you talking about
possible
videos of victims being victimized?
We don't know what are actually in the videos. What's important is whatever is sent over, that of course that victims are centered and that's all redacted. We do not and are not interested in anything that harms victims. That is not. We want to ensure that the victims' privacy and the horrible trauma they've already been
so
through.
what does that?
They're not
What does that?
traumatized.
What does that look like? What does that redaction look like? Does that look like not getting the video, or does that look like something being blurred out? I mean, what does that look like to you when you're talking about a redaction of a video?
So the negotiation of that piece is not finished, to be quite frank. I mean, we just got the subpoena out. Our request from Democrats has been very clear, which is we do not want to re-traumatize or victimize those that have suffered at the.
So I hear you on that.
That's the most important thing to us.
Okay, so oversight.
Looks like will be a very.
So the committee's issued nearly a dozen subpoenas to all these high-profile figures, Democrats, Republicans, for files and information related to Epstein. This includes, of course, former FBI directors. This includes the Clintons. How much of those depositions are going to be about Epstein? How much are going to be about Russia, considering the Attorney General has ordered prosecutors to start a grand jury probe into Obama officials over that?
Right. I mean, look, Republicans voted and they wanted to expand to a variety of folks, as you just mentioned, and bring those subpoenas in and get depositions. They're in the majority. They can bring deposition subpoenas for whoever they want. That's fine. What we want to get the files themselves and ensure that we get that information out and make it transparent to the public. They're going to, of course, try to insert politics and expand this in any way that protects Donald Trump. It's very clear from day one that the White House is involved in some type of cover-up. The entire campaign and talk about releasing the files, and then when he has the power to do so, chooses not to do so. We didn't have to issue the subpoena. He could have actually sent out the files on his own and met his own campaign promise. He chose not to do so. So we absolutely expect him to continue to try to play games like he's done with moving Ms. Maxwell to a different prison, perhaps trying to work on some kind of pardon or less sentencing. All of those issues should concern us. Donald Trump is clearly going to do everything that he can to minimize the impact to him. But yet he's involved in the cover-up, and we believe Republicans are helping in that right now.
Well, so let me ask you about this.
Which is why we want to make sure we get the actual.
The Trump administration is considering releasing a transcript of this Maxwell interview that she did over 2 days with the Deputy AG Todd Blanche, who was formerly personal lawyer to President Trump. Do you want that released?
Look, I think it should be released, but I think two things are important. I mean, one is everything should be released. It shouldn't be segments of those interviews. The entire transcript or video, whatever's available, should be released to the public. But let's also make something very clear. The person that was handling that deposition was Donald Trump's former personal lawyer. I mean, this deputy AG that folks are talking about was the president's personal lawyer.
I just said that.
Lawyer.
Just to be clear, I know we're clear on that, but and I have limited time, which is why I want to ask you about this. You said it should be released. Victims' names,
yes.
Names of those accused. When you're talking about things should be released, I mean, released with redactions, though, I assume. Like, what are you looking for? What concerns
Absolutely.
do you have?
All redactions on the victim.
And those who are accused, but nothing's been proven. What do you think there?
Look, I think that obviously those are the decisions and the sensitivity that we're going to have to take in these weeks ahead. But what's very important is if Maxwell did a deposition behind closed doors with the Trump Department of Justice, we must release those transcripts. And of course, the victims need to be protected. But let's also understand, and this was mentioned earlier in your reporting, the person that's actually giving this information is a convicted sex trafficker who has committed horrible crimes against young women and girls, who has also been untruthful in the courts. And so this person can also not be trusted. She wants a pardon or a reduced sentence. So all of that needs to be taken into consideration in that testimony. But of course, it should be released while protecting the victims that are clearly going to be need to be redacted and need to be protected in this testimony.
Yeah, she was indicted for perjury, and you have victims who say that she personally participated in their sexual abuse, and we should note that. Congressman Robert Garcia, great to speak with you. Thank you so much.